Now that we have our table created, it's time to start actually giving it some prettiness, some design, some look to it. So when you're in a table, what you can do is on the table design tab, you have the ability to have table styles that are pre-built for you and work off the theme of your document. So you can see here when I hover over these, they have names just like most styles and most colors. And when I click the drop-down menu, there's a ton. I have names for every single one of these, but these colors, again, are working off your theme colors. So if, for instance, if I choose Grid Table 4 Accent 2, and then I go to the Design tab, and I adjust my color scheme to a different color scheme, you'll see that it will adjust because on my Table Design tab, all my colors have now adjusted. So it's associated with your theme as well. You can see that it's going to go ahead and highlight certain areas, and most of the time the table formats actually don't think that you have a title inside of the table. So like our project tracker here, it's made it bold, and the reason it's made it bold is because the header row style option is selected. So if I uncheck that, you'll see that the header row is still bold, but it took off like that beautiful formatting in the white text. The header row is to highlight things at the top of your table to make it like really stand out, right? But you can see that it's thinking that our title is the header row. So what we could do is we could actually like take all of this text right here for all of our labels, and we could bold those all together. We could do the same thing for start date, due date, and completion date. We could take important dates, and using the layout tab, we could like center it, and so on and so forth. But you can see like shading might get messed up and those kinds of things, especially when you have banded rows. Banded rows is where it's taking every other row and it's adding a shadow or a special border to it. Banded columns, if I turn off banded rows and I turn on banded columns, is the opposite, where it's going to go across. But you can see when you begin merging things, it might be a little bit difficult to utilize those functions. You also have the ability to highlight like a total row, and you can see that it's going to format that and make it, because usually totals are at the bottom. And then you have first column and last column. First column is highlighting the first column in bold in this case, and last column would highlight the last column in bold, because usually some of your most important information goes into the first and last column, and that's the stuff you want to highlight. If you wanted to apply shading manually, like I wanted to make these titles have a blue manually, I could highlight them and then go to shading up here and choose a blue that I wanted. I could do the same thing for start date. I could use Control Y to do that. I could then like take the social media campaigns row and I could apply a different color to it to kind of give it, to make it stand out a little bit and make it look different than the row above it. Or I could just leave it the way it is, and so on and so forth. You've also got border styles where you could like take a border and you could create, a new border and apply it. Your cursor will turn into a paintbrush and you can paint over any border that already exists to go ahead and apply that border style to it. You could even split cells. So like I can take this whole cell and attempt to split it and see if it does, but sometimes it doesn't. It depends on what you're clicked on. And then to get rid of that border painter, you can just go up and click on that again to turn it off. So when you're working with formatting a table, you have all these options here, but when you start having multiple levels of headers or a title or those kinds of things, some of these features may not work exactly how you want them to. The other thing I want to show you is like if your cells were just kind of off and they weren't feeling very even like they are right now. So like I'm going to take estimated hours in between there. I'm going to drag that out. I'm going to make due date like super small and start date really big. And I'm going to make project super small. And you can see it's like not super, laid out. It's not laid out well. It's not even. It doesn't look nice. So what I can do is I can actually take these columns and I can highlight the cells in these columns, and I can go to the layout tab. And one of the options that I have is to start working with like cell size and auto fitting. So auto fit, what it does is it will fit either to the window or to the contents. So if I choose auto fit contents, you'll see that the table actually gets a little bit smaller than the page, and all the cells will get as big as the longest word in that column. If I choose auto fit to window, it'll make the table as wide as the page as it possibly can. And then auto fixed column width is where everything has a specific width. If I want to make the columns all the same size though, I can highlight those columns and choose distribute columns here, and it will attempt to distribute them when we don't have cells that contain. So you can see it says when the selection contains cells that extend across more than one row, the number of columns selected must be the same. So it's having issues with this important dates here. But let's see if we can take this cell right here and distribute the columns here. And you can see that sometimes this won't work depending on what you have. And so like now you can see my columns have all adjusted, but they are in fact even. So it did do what it was supposed to do, but because we have this important dates right here, it's really not working very well for it. So I could take like start date, completion date, and so on and distribute those columns inside of there and even those out. And then you could manually adjust them or, distribute columns here and so on and so forth to kind of get more of an even table look to it. So note that important or merge cells kind of affect these things, but at the same time, they can be utilized and can make a table look nice and organized.